Hello, everybody. Welcome to my weird, wonderful world. And as you can see on screen here, I have a Rick Beato. Today's video is the death of genre music, and it was a subject that really kind of piqued my interest, and I had to check it out. I often check out Rick Beato's channel because he's pretty much he's my generation in many respects, maybe a little bit older, but I pretty much agree with his statements, and you'll see it's only a 6 minute video, but I will be pausing it several times, at least a dozen times during the video. I made notes and everything, so I know exactly where I want to pause it and what to interject, because yeah, it pretty much sums up what I've always been kind of thinking of when it comes to new genres and stuff like that. So it's called The Death of Music Genre. Definitely had my attention. So, and of course, I've learned my lesson from last time. I'm using my headphones, but I want to only put one on because I want to be able to hear myself and and hear what he's saying so that I can interject. So, okay, I'm going to start it here, and this is just a little introduction.
So I'm driving my 11-year-old Layla to school the other day, and she said, "Can we listen to Loive?" If you don't know who that is, well, I'll just play you the song. The song's called From the Start.
Don't you notice how I get quiet when
This song was a huge hit last year. It's got over 500 million plays. This is really a bossa nova. She says, "What is that?" I said, "That's a style of music that was big in the 1960s. There was a huge hit called Girl from Ipanema that came out in 1964. It was written by Antonio Carlos Jobim, who happened to be my dad's favorite composer."
Now, it doesn't surprise me at all that that Rick's daughter didn't know what bossa nova was. I Now I'm not summing up all Gen Zs or even millennials into this category, because as I know there are exceptions, and there are a lot of Gen Zs who are still tuned in and turned on to a lot of things that, yeah, I may have alluded in the past that I think that all Gen Zs are a little like too, well, I'll get into that a little bit more as I go along in the video, and you'll see where I'm coming from, hopefully with this with what Rick is saying. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me that most Gen Zs don't know what certain genres would be. But let's continue.
So I thought to myself, what musical era are we even in here in
Good
almost
question.
2025? What I mean by that is, historically, each era had a defining sound or cultural movement, like swing in the 30s and 40s, rock and roll in the 50s and 60s, or even the MTV-driven pop music of the 80s, or one of my favorite eras, grunge or alternative rock of the 90s.
Now, I think that for myself personally, in my opinion, okay, that was the last big genre that was after that grunge came out of fashion. That's when, for me personally, music started losing its personality, started losing its flavor. And he'll talk about the next genre that kind of came out after that, which kind of lost me. But it was that grunge alternative that kind of produced a band like Tool. Tool came out of that. I'm not saying that Tool is that type of genre, because they're more in the prog rock genre, in my opinion. But in the early days with Opiate and with Undertow, I feel they were more in that grungy area, and a lot of people did associate them with the grunge era. But they are a genre all their own, I think. All right, continue.
This was because mass media, meaning radio, TV, MTV, print media, was all coordinated with major labels which controlled the distribution channels of the music to create dominant narratives.
Yes.
So that you would have these ubiquitous artists and songs. If you think of someone like Sting, Every Breath You Take, that song was known by everyone,
It
which
was.
made it easier to label the era by a few breakout genres or styles. If you take a style like grunge, what does grunge sound like? Grunge is heavy, low-tuned guitars, introspective, dark
Yep.
lyrics, really natural sounding instruments, and great singers like Kurt Cobain from Nirvana, Eddie Vedder from Pearl Jam, Lane Staley from Alice in Chains, and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. The grunge bands had its own fashion aesthetic as well. Think of things from thrift stores, flannel shirts, band t-shirts, ripped jeans, sweaters like Kurt Cobain would wear, or combat boots. These were all things that were associated with the style of grunge.
Yes, yes, I remember that. I remember when, as soon as the Nirvana broke, and then your Soundgarden and the bands that he just mentioned, you see a very quick shifting in the way people dress. It was very obvious that you could look at somebody and say, "Hey, I know what genre of music you're into." For me, back in the day, okay, we were like, especially the 80s, and like, yeah, especially the late 80s, I consider myself, and that was when I was going through high school, because I went through high school from the year of 88 to 1990, and throughout the whole high school era, I was a headbanger. I just called myself headbanger. You can call them, you can call us metalheads, whatever. But I wore the jean jackets with the patch on the back. Tried to grow my hair long, but it never looked good on me. I always ended up cutting it because I just, didn't really like the look of it on me, even though I really wanted to be associated with that genre of heavy metal. And yeah, it was a big movement. And you could look at somebody and know exactly what genre they were into by the way they dress. And you kind of don't get that today. Now you see people like Gen Zs wearing shirts of bands, right? And you go and ask them, name three songs from that band that you're wearing the shirt, and they'll tell you, I don't know the band, I just really like the shirt. Okay, that's kind of missing the point. Well, let's continue with what Rick Beato is saying.
Okay, so when was the last definable era? To me, it would be the late 90s, early 2000s pop acts like Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, Britney Spears, or even Avril Lavigne.
My least favorite genre of music. That were what all the everything that he was just saying here about those bands are the bands that kind of started turning me off to the newer music, because it was kind of obvious to me that they were catering to the lowest common denominator, which is the children, the kids, the ones who were really buying the media and everything. And I did not like especially Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, and all those boy bands. They turned me off. They were like, I didn't they were targeting a certain demographic that I was not a part of. That's when music really started to lose me, and I started to feel melancholy about music. It's like, what's happening with music? It's losing its flavor. It's losing it's becoming bland, and it's not. I don't want to consume it because it's just not taste. It doesn't taste good in my mouth. I didn't like that genre of music. It's not my generation. Let's continue.
That was a really dominant musical era. Here's an
Yeah,
interesting
it was.
fact. In 1999, record sales reached their peak when 600 million people spent an average of $64 on records, achieving $40 billion in sales of recorded music. That's insane.
It is insane because it was the highest domination of music, and it was because it was catering to like a large demographic of people, but not my generation. But still, even the older generation still kind of like that. It was like, because it had mass appeal, because it was just, again, catering to the least common denominator. And I was always looking for substance, always looking for. And now, I have actually. There's some very few of my music, maybe even like 3-4% that would be categorized in that, that flavorless, because there's something about it that, that is likable, and you see the effort. Maybe there's a little bit of heart to it, but for the most part, those bands, those last four bands he mentioned, yeah, not my cup of tea at all. Let's continue.
So, what was the turning point that ended these dominant genres of music?
You all
To
know.
me, it was the internet and streaming. It was things like Napster,
Yep.
the iTunes Store,
Yep.
Spotify,
Yep.
YouTube.
Yes.
All of these things acted as a disruptor or disruptive force that changed the way that people discovered and consumed music. It relied on algorithmic playlists and global distribution, which gave equal footing to niche artists and micro genres. The result was that no single dominant or must hear genre movement was able to flourish because listeners followed their personal taste curation rather than mass consensus. That mass consensus was created by things like having a 3-month window in which the record is set up. All records were set up with this 3-month period. You'd release a single, you'd go to press 3 months ahead of time,
Mm-hmm.
you'd be in all these magazines, you'd have your video hit on MTV, everything would happen at once, and you would build that consensus, and everyone was hearing this record all at the same time.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That for me is still my preferred way to consume music. Of course, my biggest source of music from that era was Much Music, seeing videos, and that was they called them promos. They called them music promos. We called them videos, but that was for me the best way to discover new music. It made it personable. Because you're in your living room, you have it turned on to Much Music or MTV for the people in the States, and when a certain song hits, you feel like that song was made for you in many ways. Like I remember the first time I heard, for example, just as a quick example, this album from Prozac, okay? It was from a 30-second commercial. I liked the way the commercial looked, and then I kept on waiting for almost a good couple of weeks after they announced that this was coming out. I was waiting for that video, and the main video was Amabala Ray, which some of the older generations, like the boomers and that, don't I know they don't care for it too much, but for me, from some reason, it hooked me in. I liked the way it sounded, and again, because it was targeting to, I can't really explain it, but when you heard something that had, and I felt it had a certain ingenuity. It was something different. It was something dancey and catchy, and 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 yeah, Much Music was my main source of where I discovered music. So okay, let's continue with what Rick has to say.
In today's musical landscape, there are countless subgenres that exist in parallel. Bedroom pop, lo-fi beats, hyper pop, neo-soul revival,
That last
niche
one,
metal scenes like progressive
yeah,
metal,
progressive.
and each of them have their own dedicated fan bases.
Yes, yes. Like for the last one, the prog, genre, uh, and I am discovering that is probably my favorite genre of music, especially listening to Scott Lade from the Prog Corner, which he, rewind. Want to make sure I'm pointing in the right direction. See, it's kind of, yeah, it's on the wrong. I keep wanting to point this way, but it's this way. That last one down here of the prog metal. Yeah, thanks to Scott, and of course, he keeps giving me so many albums I want to check out, but there's too many, too many. I don't know where to start. I made a promise to myself that I'm going to be because he did his top 25 prog albums video a few days ago, And I want to make it my mission in 2025 to try to sample as many of those albums as humanly possible and get to the albums I still want to listen to in my collection that's just kind of been sitting there because I've been a little bit too addicted to YouTube and that lately. But the holidays are coming up. In January and February, my work hours are going to dwindle, so I'll have more time to be able to do other things and listen to that music. I know there's still the one I really do enjoy playing, of course, lately is the Larry Graves radio show on his Patreon, and I'll be listening to it Friday for sure. The new show, absolutely. And so yeah, when it comes to the to the some of the new subgenres as he called it, like with the bedroom pop, lo-fi beats, hyper pop. Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool that these subgenres are still out there for people to discover in that. But in the large part, major genre movements are no longer a thing, and I think that's a little bit sad. Okay, let's continue.
like progressive metal, and each of them have their own dedicated fan bases. Because
Yes.
today there's really no unifying broadcast platform like we had with radio and MTV that forced this collective experience for listeners. So really now we're in what I would call a post-genre world where artists openly blend styles like rap and country or jazz chords and R&B or electronic music and rock, blurring the boundaries of these specific genres. And genre labels feel increasingly outdated, replaced
Yes,
really by
yes.
mood-based or influencer, I hate that word,
Yeah, me
influencer,
too. I hate that word.
influencer-driven curation.
Yes, yes, it is because it's coming from the perspective of I consider, and mind you, okay, it's opinion, the most spoiled generation. In the last, because everything you want to know is right at your fingertips. There's no hype really behind it. It can go in one ear, out the other, and is forgotten. Like here today, forgotten tomorrow. Is not making a stance. It's not making an impact like it used to. It's all quick. Like I keep saying, quick fix. It's a quick fix world we live in now, where if you want to know anything, just Google it. Or if you want to hear any song, you can either go on Spotify or YouTube, like you said. It's it's an effortless world now. I mean, growing up, if you wanted to hear a new band, and if you saved your money, and when you go out and buy that album, it meant something. Like to be able to grab that physical item and have it in your hand and say, "Hey, look what I own," and it was like a badge of honor. Like having like back in the day when you had the new Metallica album and you were showing it off to your friends, like, "Hey, check this out." Like if it wasn't for my friend who was all proud of that Master of Puppets CD, or I believe it was on cassette maybe, and when he played it for me for the first time, that meant something. It was meaningful. I find music nowadays, and again, there's a lot of exceptions. There's still exceptions. But for the most part, I find the music today it doesn't have that impact. It doesn't have as much meaning as it used to. Now it's just like, yep, swipe left, or swipe up, or whatever. Which way you want to swipe it to get rid of it, and on to the next, on to the next. You might listen to about maybe 30 seconds of a song, and nope, I don't like it, and is passed by. You can't really digest the music like you used to be able to, and it lost all its meaning. Okay, let's continue with what Rick has to say.
The industry success metrics now reflect broad, varied tastes, where
Oh
you can have
yes, I
massive
agree. This
global hits that people don't know.
No,
When I did my video on Blinding Lights, it's the most streamed song on Spotify.
I never
There's
heard
so
of it.
many people say, I've never even heard
I
that
never
song.
heard of it.
I know so many people that have never heard a Taylor Swift
And they
song.
only
They know who
know
she is.
two
They don't know
songs.
any of her music. I just did this video where I mentioned Mr. Beast, the biggest person on this platform.
Which I've
Half the comments are like,
fallen out of.
I don't know who that is. So are we between eras, or is this the new normal? It's possible that we're in a transitional phase,
hope
the
we're in a
algorithmic age, where discovery is personalized rather than collective. But for now, we're living
collective.
through a moment where each listener can curate their own mini era, I guess, where there's no particular dominant sound, just a galaxy of possibilities. Love to know your
Galaxy of
thoughts. Hit the subscribe
possibilities.
button, leave a comment. Thanks for watching.
Now I agree with that. I'm just getting rid of that. Now I agree with that, and I want to make this a little bit bigger for now. Yeah, here we go. And then now I'm just going to tell you, try to give my little 10 cents on this. It used to be 5 cents, but because of inflation, it's now 10 cents. But yeah, when it comes to I can take these off now. When it comes to new music and everything, it's yeah, it's I'm at a loss for words in some ways. I think I probably should end this right here before I make this too long and start babbling. But I think Rick Beato said it perfectly in that whole video. I'll be leaving a link to that video pinned down in the comments below, and also links to Larry Graves' channel and Scott's the Pod Corner, because I mentioned them, and I always want to leave links to their channels whenever I mention them on my channel, because I think they're great channels to discover older music, and that you're hearing people talk about them with some real emotion and some real, like, for a true love for that type of for old style music. And I'm just a message to any of the to some if any Gen Zers or even millennials are watching this, okay, be open mind. I do kind of like what Rick said at the end about a galaxy of possibilities. Yes, there's possibilities with a lot of the music on these platforms that he talked about that kind of turned me off. I still wish for the old days when I was discovering music. I mean, of course, I mean, I discovered one of my favorite bands, my second favorite band now, still tied with Sparks, of King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. I discovered that from watching a YouTube video about micro tuning, and they mentioned King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard, and I thought that was so interesting that that band was using micro tuning, and I wanted to hear that. And then I played a couple of songs, and I was hooked. I was hooked. But it was because those songs, okay, felt like an older era style of music, and it was just something different, innovative, and energetic. It had an energy and a heart to it that I was missing from a lot of newer music. Same thing with Sparks. Sparks, I gravitated to Sparks because there was a certain heart to it. There was certain, genre defining, the defying bands. Both of them, they're not stuck in one genre, but multiple genres that they've been able to grab different genres throughout the years, even though King Gizzard is still a newer band and are doing, like, yeah, but they're taking homage, they're taking their cues from all the classics in classical music that just, you can consider classic. Anything over 25 years old in music or whatnot is considered classic. Classic. So anything from the 80s, especially 80, like 70s and 80s and early 90s and that, yeah, classics. It's classics. Right up to almost 2000. Right? Like anything before 1999, consider a classic. You can consider a classic. And once we hit the new year into 2025, yeah, yeah. So anything before 25 years ago. So yes, honor the classics. That's what I say. That's the genre I gravitated to the most, is those classic goodness. 'Cause everything after the 90s kind of started going downhill, especially with the Backstreet Boys and New Kids on the Block, and I was starting with New Kids on the Block, but NSYNC and those bands from the 2000s, early 2000s, and that kind of really lost me in those genres. But you saw the video, and I should suggest, if you want to watch the whole video without me interrupting, you do so. But I'm going to let you go now. And if you are watching this for the first time, please consider subscribing to my channel. I am doing my best to give you all the best content that I can possibly give you. And I was kind of happy to find this video so I could do something like this for once. It's my first video kind of like this in a way. So yeah, also leave comments. I want to know what you think of all that. Give me your 10 cents. You can add another nickel in there if you like. And don't be afraid of the like button. Please hit the like button. And then, as always, like I'm always going to say, please, please be safe. Take care. I will see you on the flip side. And please, everybody, just have a great day, evening, morning, night, or afternoon, wherever you may be. Peace, everybody.